Chaps, we've got Andy, not Nathan. The contact page is, and you're one of those like didn't have a clue who you are, whatever else. And I was like, okay, let's research this guy because obviously I have to do the due diligence to make sure you're not some secret neo-Nazi what could bite us on the arse in 5 years' time and all this kind of stuff.
I've got the haircut though.
No, you have. I didn't want to say, but no, you nailed it, mate. But I was looking at your website and your social media. I'm like, this is an interesting guy. One hell of a story. How are we going to do this in 20 minutes? I don't have a clue, but I've got really good at shutting people up at about 17 minutes. So
Go for it.
tell us about yourself, mate. Because I think some of our followers might be able to learn a trick or two from you. Tell us about yourself, mate.
Yeah. So
Straight in there, sorry.
I work with men now, but the reason why I do that is because most of my life as a child and as an adult, I struggled. I struggled with understanding myself, with relating to other people, with reading social cues, with being hyper reactive, with having lots of arguments, sometimes fights, burning bridges in relationships and friendships and at work. Just not understanding how I operate myself and not knowing that I could, just thinking that I was broken. That's the
Yeah.
long and short of it. And that came from, for a lot of people, it would be like an ordinary childhood in the 70s. I was a middle child. My older brother was very academic. My younger sister was very creative. And I didn't really get it. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus, was adventurous, didn't play by rules, didn't understand rules really. Maybe could have been seen as rebellious, but I wasn't really rebellious. But I would get hit a lot, told that I was mental by my mum quite a lot when I was a lot younger. Struggled through school, managed to get like scraped through with some grades. School's a nightmare. And then found my way into the workforce, doing work that I hated. Ended up working for a record shop, which I loved. Got held up in an armed robbery, got held hostage, suffered agoraphobia and PTSD as a result of that.
Wow.
And
Okay.
the police decide. I was the assistant manager of that shop, and the police decided that they'd try the good cop bad cop thing with me, which I had no idea about. Didn't know that existed. And they
Yeah,
were like,
no, it's definitely a thing. Yeah, I don't want to out myself so much. It's definitely a thing.
we think you've been involved in a robbery, mate. So tell us about it. And I just that was massive for me in terms of my mental health declining. Eventually, they realised that they were barking up the wrong tree. Went to an
Yeah.
ID parade behind glass to ID the guys. Had a full blown panic at night, proper panic attack where I had a seizure and collapsed. So
Wow.
not just a bit of anxiety, like I was having seizures brought on by the PTSD, which I don't have anymore because it was just a symptom of like the stress. Tried various kinds of therapy over the years for helping me with that, with social anxiety, with anxiety in relationships. So I had an anxious attachment style. So relationships were very kind of on, off, toxic, have a fight, have sex, have a fight, have sex, have a fight, have sex. There was no middle ground, nothing that was about love or kindness. And that was basically my life. Even after I retrained and went into the corporate world and did mildly well there. I never set the world on fire with anything. With anything I did, I was kind of average at
Yeah.
best, and had a ton more to give, but didn't know how to get it out of me. Had no idea what I was capable of, and felt lost and depressed most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So how do you get out of that one?
The truth is really random. I'd started doing a lot of running, and I had a double groin strain, and my physio.
Sorry. What? What's a double groin strain?
So the groin muscles, the inner thigh muscles. There's three inner thigh muscles, and one of them is called the adductor longus, and that comes from the inner pelvis and attaches to the I think it's the greater trochanter, which is like the thigh bone.
Yeah.
And what had happened was, just through poor running form, poor core control, um, they were just getting overstretched, overstrained. So they were inflamed, which it felt like someone had set fire to my inner thighs, basically. And I
Imagine one
couldn't,
across my legs. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was really painful. But as a result of that, though, my physio was like, dude, you need to try yoga. And I was like, why would I try yoga? It's just old ladies. And I tried it and it was really fucking hard. It was so hard. Like I was sweating. I was sweating from my fingernails, my eyeballs, my ears, like any part of me that could sweat, like my inner knees. It was
Yeah.
so hard. But I persevered, and I suddenly realized that there was something in being able to be present with discomfort in your body. I didn't know what it was, didn't understand it, but what actually was happening was, this is like the magic of yoga. What it's doing is the fascia, which is the connective tissue, which is runs throughout a body. Essentially, it's like, inside the skin, the tendons, the muscles, the ligaments, the bones, fascia connects all of that. It's just this stuff, this membrane that is just throughout every part of your body.
Yeah.
And that has tons of sensory fibers, nerve endings there. And so what can happen when you're working with the fascia, when you're working with muscles and tension, stress, and actually repressed emotions in the body, what you can do is you can start to regulate a nervous system which is in dysfunction. And if you're stressed all of the time, if you're anxious, if you can't, I'd had nightmares until my late 30s, like literally since I was about 4.
Yeah.
And that is just a sign of a dysregulated nervous system and a lot of trauma that hasn't been cleared or calmed. And so yoga actually helped me learn how to breathe, learn how to regulate my nervous system, learn how to sit and be present with what was coming up. I couldn't clear my head because that's impossible for a human being to do. But over 7 or 8 years, it changed my life. And the next part of my story, which is kind of semi-dramatic, is I went to do a yoga training in New York, and I'd done like all of the preparation I needed to do, had some great mentors. I'd practiced teaching for about 1.5 years before that. And it was literally like a month before I was going to fly to New York, driving around in this fancy car that I had, because I had quite a lot of money. It's a soft top sports car, driving around country roads. It was a Monday morning in January, hit a drain cover which had black ice on it, car veered across the road, hit a ditch, and then rolled 3 times and ended up in a field the right way up. The car literally it gave its life to save my life. Yeah. And my head went through the driver's side window, and I was listening to some like yoga chanty music, which I really love, mantra meditation music. And what I was learning was that when we sing, when we chant, this is why going to concerts or being part of a choir is such an uplifting experience, because it stimulates a nerve called the vagus nerve, which I knew nothing about until I started practicing yoga, right?
So when we heard of it, yeah.
Vagus is like a Latin word for wandering. So it starts in the brain. It's one of the main cranial nerves. It comes under the jaw, through the throat, like in round the heart, into the belly. So if we like rub our belly when we're feeling a little bit sore, if we hum, if we massage our neck really softly, if we sing, if we make this sound, that will calm us down. It's wild. It upregulates the parasympathetic nervous system. I had no idea about this, but I'd started chanting in yoga classes. And I had this fear of singing, and it got rid of my fear of singing, which is wild, like lifetime long fear of singing. So I was listening to this chanting music, the Hare Krishna mantra. Well, would you have it on a Monday morning? And the car crashed, right? Everything in the car was dead, apart from me. But the Hare Krishna mantra was playing on the car stereo.
Oh, yeah.
I know. So I had a spiritual moment there. I was like, what? Like the car, battery's dead. Like I'm in this field, 8:00 in the morning, pulled myself out of the car and the Hare Krishna mantra is playing. And that made me realize that there was something bigger that I still don't understand what it might be, that was like protecting me.
Yeah.
And so to this day, I still have a relationship with Krishna. And that, after that, I was off work for 6 months. I was off work for 3 months rather. and I had this incredibly significant nerve pain. I was kind of like paralyzed on the right hand side of my body. I was depressed. Like, I went to that place, that place that men can get to when they get really desperate. Like,
Yeah.
I was considering that thing.
Yeah. Oh,
And
we do talk, you're allowed to mention, we do talk about it. We just bounce around it.
yeah, I was considering taking my life
Yeah. Okay.
because, like, I couldn't use the right side of my body. I was in constant pain, like the nerve pain in my neck, my shoulder, my arm. Was I couldn't sleep because of it, and that was for 3 months. It was just awful. So I've got a lot of empathy for people who experience chronic pain. And then one of my friends who was a yoga teacher gave me this book by a guy called John E. Sarno, who's like an American psychotherapist, and it was called Healing Back Pain. And she said, listen, read the book, even if you don't understand it, even if you don't agree with it, even if you think this is a load of rubbish, read the book, do the exercises in the book. I did that. Within a month, all of my pain had gone. I'd been seeing a surgeon, looked like I was going to have vertebrae fused. All of that stopped. I have not had any issues since. And the book talked about the cause of much chronic pain in the human body is suppressed emotions, stuff that we are completely unaware of. A lot of it is rage and anger. Rage is an emotion where if someone crosses our boundaries, even when we're little, someone does something or makes us do something, we don't want to do it, all the way up to being an adult. Every time we don't defend ourselves, every time we freeze, every time we swallow it down because we think, oh, I can't be bothered. Like, what's the point? Like, we suppress that emotion, which is actually like, oh, go away, leave me alone, for God's sake. No, I don't want to do it. And so it comes out. Like, we have explosions. As men, we tend to have explosions, right, at random times. And that's rage, right? And rage and anger are emotions that, and women can do it as well, but particularly men, we suppress, we repress, and that can make us sick. And this book was saying there was a lot of unexpressed emotion connected to my father. I figured out through like getting coaching, like therapeutic coaching and other kinds of modalities, relationship to my father, relationship to myself as a man, how I saw myself as a man, relationship to other men, my judgments of other men, my mum, all of this stuff. So, and that eventually was what got me into learning about masculinity and trauma. So that is my story in a nutshell. How'd I do?
You've done very, very well. Have you ever read a book? I'm going to change the tangent on there.
Go for it, man.
You just reminded me of a book I read a little while ago. I've just Googled it. So if you heard tapping on there, I was being a bit rude. No, it's called The Sickening Mind.
No.
I'll have to find it for me. And it's basically one of those things. It's by Paul Martin. It's a really, really good book. It goes back from like the history of time of just like sometimes if you convince yourself you're sick, you will be sick.
Yes.
And it backs up data going back hundreds of years. And it's kind of I think that's kind of what you're saying with the yoga stuff, isn't it, Rick? Because I'll be honest with you, when people mention yoga, I'm like, fuck that.
It's hard, man. It's really hard.
Yeah, but I think there's that. But there's just when it talks about the spiritual side, I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'll switch it off because obviously tough masculine bloke and all that. But when I hear stories,
Same. Yeah.
When I hear stories like this, I'm like, okay, there's got to be something in it, and this is why we were not scared to highlight this because it might not work for me, but if it works for you, it's not wrong.
Yeah. I do not, I can't claim to understand how the universe is created and whether we're spiritual beings and there's guardian angels. I can't begin to even comprehend that stuff. However, if you think about the size of the universe and us as little human beings on this rock spinning around the sun, there's got to be more than just us wandering around trying to make a bit more money or trying to get, trying not to get frustrated with our boss or whatever. There's got to be more to life, right? And that's one of the big questions, isn't it? Like, what's life about? And that, I guess that's why spirituality, or people who go like on a maybe exploring men's work, for example. You know, it's like there's got to be more for me to achieve. Like, what am I capable of? And I guess that coming back to like what you do and what I do, it's like, how can we, how can we as men be healthy and grow and find a way to be role models for other people who are sharing some of the struggles that we have or that we've had.
I think you've hit a valid point, and that's something we've bounced around before. I think
Yeah.
I think more so men were losing the ability to actually know what we're capable of.
Gosh, that is such a, I mean, that is huge.
Yeah, no,
Even,
absolutely. We've only got about another 5 minutes, but it is absolutely huge, and
yeah,
this is why, like, I love. For me, I love going to like the Lake or Peak District in winter when it's like minus 14, 15, because I know that I can test myself and survive in those conditions. Yeah, I've got the good equipment and all this kind of. This is why I actively go to like racetracks, racing motorbikes around racing tracks, because I want
yeah,
to know what I'm capable of. Some people would say,
yeah,
"Oh, that's just being an adrenaline junkie." It's not. It's about reminding myself what I'm capable of doing. And
yeah.
I think society has sucked us into just staying in our lane.
I agree. I think there's a lot to be said about how confused modern men are about what masculinity could be for them, what being a man could be for them. I
Yeah,
mean, a physical body is an example, right? There's so much that we could do with it,
yeah,
but it has to be beyond Netflix. It has to be beyond being stuck on your phone. And this stuff it's
yeah.
literally addictive. So pulling ourselves away from that for long enough to be like, okay, how can I test my body? Like this morning with my personal trainer, I did like 300 deadlifts, 300 chest presses, and 300 bicep curls, all weighted. And it took me about 40 minutes. And his dog is like my best friend. I could
Yeah,
not, I was like a T Rex. I couldn't stroke his dog afterwards. But
yeah,
the point is, if we don't push ourselves, how do we know what we're capable of? But we're too addicted to our comfort zones, and we're too. It's such a good point that you made there, Daniel. It's like we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to experience pain. We don't want to be scared. And yet, what happens if we discover that on the other side of all of that stuff is our growth, is where we really see, wow, oh my God, I did it. Like, I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
believe I could do that.
yeah. Exactly. It's such a hard one, and I think I think everyone needs the freedom to do what they want to yeah, just push themselves, whatever gender. And yeah, the world is designed to. I'm going to sound like a bloody matrixy person now, and I think the world is designing us to just, yeah, sit and stare and look at a screen and absorb constant information.
Yeah.
I think we're so focused on absorbing information, we don't need to memorize anything anymore.
Yeah. And we don't know who we are because
Exactly.
we don't spend any time away from this stuff to figure out who we are. And who we are, we figure out when we are in these big open spaces in nature without other people, without devices, and we're just present. We're like, whoa. Like when you look up at the stars at night.
Exactly that. It's crazy. But I think at the minute we're in a dangerous ground, especially when we talk about masculinity.
Mm.
Nobody talks about masculinity without toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
That drives me absolutely nuts. Absolutely. Because me personally, I think the Andrew Tates, I think they're a load of knobs. If I can be honest. That's dangerous ground. But I think what we're doing is we're telling blokes talk and all this kind of stuff. But if blokes are seen as being masculine, they're being pigeonholed into the whole. You can't talk about masculinity without toxic masculinity. I think the knock-on effect of that now is just normal everyday blokes are like, if you're gonna stereotype me of just being that kind of toxic, then I ain't gonna talk.
Yeah, it's
You
tough.
carry on. Yeah,
It is tough. I mean, I went to see the Barbie film with my partner, and she's a women's coach, and we came out and we were like, that is a strong vehicle for modern feminism.
yeah,
And while I completely understand why it originated, because the patriarchy, the very emotionally damaged, emotionally immature version of masculinity, which is all about grabbing power and not sharing it, and all of the stuff that's colonialism, excuse me, and big business has been built upon not healthy masculine traits.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of wounding, but it creates a lot of wounding for men as well as women, right? But at the same time, I came out of that film thinking it was really unbalanced. But you can understand why people are going to be pissed off with men if they're constantly not allowed in the workplace, to earn as much as their male equivalents or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think feminism and masculinity, or toxic masculinity, I think they're a product of a lot of wounding, a lot of unhealed men in the world. And our roles are just to kind of heal ourselves and help men find other routes so they don't perpetuate those kind of negative cycles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're a few years away from any sort of recovery from that, really. But this is why we're not scared to just have open conversations about mental health and life problems and stuff like that. And somewhere, hopefully, there'll be a bit. If someone's watching this from your world and someone watching it from my world,
Yeah.
I've nothing to do with the yoga world at all. It freaks me out a little bit. But now I'm like, I'm going to read that book, actually. But do you know what? If we can meet in the middle and show these two different worlds, sense. You know what I mean? If it changes one mind, then the whole thing's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Ironically, I've moved away from the yoga world in terms of what I do professionally, but I still keep up like the breathing and I still keep up the meditation. Although I'm going to be really human here and say, I've just finished about a COVID 3 weeks, which literally destroyed my brain.
Did you have all that? Because we had I had it a little while ago, and it was the worst. I've had it 4 times. And this was worse than the original one. Like the headaches were horrendous.
I didn't get headaches, but I had like sweats for like 3 days, and then I was just like my brain. I couldn't access my brain, and being self-employed, I needed to use my brain. Yeah. What I found at the end of it though was that even though I've been meditating while I've been sick, I stopped meditating, and what I found was I was super impatient with people, and this is a thing, like these practices which have gone on for 1,000 years. Like for me, meditating is just sitting down quietly and just focusing on the breath coming in and out of my belly, and just allowing the breath to come, like with a soft throat and soft nose, just breathing into my belly, breathing out from there, just setting a timer and just focusing on that literally for 5 minutes. Not about clearing my head of thoughts. Like that stuff is going to be like, I don't know, the M6 on a busy Friday afternoon after work, that the brain is designed to think. But what that does do is it helps give us, like, it's the equivalent, like we were saying about, of going into nature. And when we don't have that space, like this week, great example for me, when we don't have that space, we feel a lot stressed. I felt a lot more stressed this week.
Yeah. But I think that's well, when I see people, especially on LinkedIn, I've run a couple of businesses, so I hate LinkedIn, but I have to use LinkedIn quite a lot.
Yeah.
You get the two sides. You get the people sort of churn and burn, and power. And then you get the other people where they're just like, you know what? Every day I block out my lunch break. Literally, so no one can book a meeting and they'll do it. And I absolutely applaud people like that. But I think where I'm going with this one is, like with me, roughly every quarter, I make a point of going wild camping. I make a point of going.
I love that.
Of doing stuff. And even my missus just like, you left me alone with the bloody dogs. She'll take the piss about it. She left me alone with the weekend with the dogs while you're having campfires on on a mountain and stuff like that. There's my disclaimer. We've never once had a fire on a mountain. There, just to cover my ass on that one. So the thing. But yeah, even though you don't have the time to do something for yourself,
yes,
you've got to switch off.
Yes. Yeah, even though we feel like we don't have the time, we have to create, we get to create the time. And that's the difference between like a victim mindset, like, oh my God, I don't have enough time. Like who's in charge of how we spend our time? Like we are.
Exactly.
We are completely in charge of it, right? So when we get to that, we've got to be like, I have to create the time to slow down, even if I feel like the world's going to end if I don't. Yeah. But that's the truth. It's hard. It's really hard for men to do. I struggle with that as well. So I really applaud you for doing that. I think that's amazing.
I've not 100% got it. I'm not absolutely perfect with it, but I literally.
Well, none of us are. But it's a habit, though, isn't it? It's like, like you say, seeing someone blocking out time in their calendar and being like, no one gets access to me during this time is so healthy.
Yeah, but it's not promoted enough.
No.
And you'll see on like LinkedIn, you'll see the people like, I earn £150,000 an hour and all that kind of blah 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 blah. I've seen that, and they'll get so much engagement and everyone going, oh, look how great you are. But the people who are just on it, it's like, yeah, I just block out. I literally will go for a walk for 20 minutes every single day to clear my head.
Yeah.
Zero, absolutely zero. And I think
I get it, and that the optimal time actually for the brain to reset is 20 minutes. So here's what else.
Really? Okay.
If we're talking about tips for mental health, right? And this is something that I've got out of the habit of as well, but I highly recommend this.
Can I stop you on there? The only reason being is because we always end the video with, if somebody can relate to this. I feel like I'm just saying the same scripts and it gets.
Yeah, of course, man.
So what I'm going to do is ask you if anyone. Same thing. If give a couple of tips about somebody, so if they can relate to this video, feeling like shit, chronic pain, depression doesn't.
Yes.
Give them some tips.
Okay. If you can relate to what we've talked about, and if at the moment you're feeling stuck, you're feeling like you're broken, like there's something wrong with you, like you definitely, no one would understand if you talk to them and you feel like you're broken. Know that that's not actually the truth, even though it really feels like it. It's actually not the truth. It's just our brain has a way of sabotaging us, and we don't understand it until we really understand our own psychology, which is where we get help with like coaches or therapists or whatever. So if that's where you are, I want you to know that even though it feels really true, there will be somebody who will be willing to hear you and not give you their opinion, not telling you that what you're feeling is not relevant. There is going to be somebody. And what I would recommend you do, if you've got any friends who are, good listeners, I would recommend you just send them a message and say, hey, listen, I'm feeling really low at the moment. I'd appreciate it if I could just call you for 20 minutes and you could just listen to me. Do you have capacity for that? So you give them permission to say yes or no, but also when you say, do you have capacity for that? Even if they say not today, they might say, how about tomorrow though, at 8:00 in the morning?
Yeah.
So you're giving yourself permission to reach out to someone, and also you're giving them permission to not feel like they're going to be dumped on. That would be tip number one. Tip number two, get outside, put your phone down and take a walk for 20 minutes. Even if you're in the middle of a city, just take a walk. And relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, and just see if you can breathe through your nose. And the third tip would be pick up a pillow and scream into it 10 times, and then see how you feel after that.
That was a good one. I'm just going to add on there, and I think this is something I've been saying more and more.
Yeah.
We own our mobile phone. The mobile phone doesn't own us. And do you know what this fit? And do you know what is on the old WhatsApp? I turned off read reports so they can't read mine. They don't know when I read it. That does backfire because I wouldn't know when you've read it either. And do you know what? I don't care when you read it. I reply when you want. But the amount of people who got really annoyed with me, my wife included, funny enough, who got really annoyed with me for turning off read reports. And are you looking at your settings to see if you can turn it off now?
No, I'm just writing down what you said there about mobile phones. I get it though, because there's so much about human psychology where we want to be sure that someone else is giving us attention. So I can understand that your wife would be upset about it, but like, this is a boundary for you, right? This is important for your energy and your mental health.
Yeah. So all notifications, even the read reports. And it's funny now, even with people, they're just like, I'm sorry, I took a couple of days to reply to you. And I applaud them because they own their phone, not the other way around. And I also, I've got read reports turned off for a reason. I think that's a problem, isn't it? And I'm quite conscious of time. You're one of those ones you keep going and going and going. I think we just got that mentality. We want instant results right now.
Yes. That's society now. It's the instant dopamine fix. And these devices are really... they're messing with our brains, and of course that messes with their mental health.
Yeah, exactly. Let me hit the unrecord button. That's a bloody good video. 1 second, mate.